When it comes to movie deaths, less is almost always more. While seeing feral zombies tearing someone's guts out whilst they're still alive might scratch a sadistic itch, and there is nothing quite like watching an alien parasite bust its way through someone's sternum to get the blood pumping, it is the nuanced, cleverly concealed moments of fate that are the ones that stick with you. A little bit of mystery with your eye gouging goes a long way, after all. It's true that the scariest deaths are the ones you don't see coming, and I mean that quite literally, since characters kicking the bucket off screen usually have a far worse time than those that we see. Whether it's too visceral to actually play out, or if the impact lies in imagining what grisly events could have transpired, there's an alarming amount of fictional people that meet their end where audiences cannot go. Seeing isn't always believing, after all. I am the appropriately also off-screen Ash from What Culture, and these are 10 horrifying movie deaths that happen off-screen. 10. The Mechanic. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Considering Indiana Jones has long been a family classic for his archaeology adventures and daring escapades, it's surprising to remember this one particularly gnarly death scene comes from the same film that so many people idolised in their childhoods. Appearing when Indiana is attempting to flee a Nazi dig site, with the badass Marion providing cover from a grounded flying wing, a mechanic appears to apprehend the whip-wielding hero, and quickly disappears again thanks to an unfortunate accident. As the plane slowly spins around where Indy and the giant Nazi are brawling, Jones takes a pummeling before realising that the passing propeller is heading his way. He ducks, hides, and leaves Mustachio to get sliced into fine mincemeat as the camera shows us only a splash of blood across the aircraft, and then quickly moves on. Seriously, that is an awfully brutal way to die. I mean, he definitely deserved it, being a Nazi and everything, but imagine taking a spinning blade to the face that has the force to turn you into a human geyser. Horrible. 9. Car towing. The Hitcher. Unfortunately, this brilliantly disgusting death had all of the nuance taken out of it by a shoddy remake in 2007 that left nothing to the imagination. But 1987's The Hitcher still stands as the origin point for creating such a f***ed-up premise in the first place. Waitress Nash has been tied up between two cars as a hostage situation, used to get a conversation between the titular psychopathic hitchhiker and average Joe Jim Halsey. With her wrists bound to the bumper of a truck and her ankles tied to the back of another, should she move, she'd be torn apart quite literally at the seams. And wouldn't you know it, that is exactly what happens. We watch as Nash's hands jerk and she screams out in pain before the shot cuts to black. And we're left with, stretching out, a painfully vivid imagining of what exactly happens when someone is torn apart by trucks. 8. Heather. The Blair Witch Project. Heather Donahue's fate is one of the most haunting in horror movie history, as we never truly learn what happens to her when she's taken in by the forest and its mysterious witchy inhabitant in the Blair Witch Project. It's a movie built on the fear of what we don't see, and the ending doubles down on that to a serious degree. Finishing on an electrifying cliffhanger, we watch as protagonist Heather roams around the basement of an abandoned house in the woods, only to discover her friend motionless and silent in the corner of the room. That is very creepy. After screaming hysterically for maybe 400 years, which is understandable considering she's been hunted by a supernatural witch, she then falls silent, drops the camera, and the footage ends. That's it, that's all we get. So what the hell happened to her? Did the witch capture the pair in a grotty woodland 3-bed, or did she just lose her mind from fear? Did she pass out? Did she actually die, or was she eternally tortured since we found Josh's remains before hearing him screaming for help in the forest? Maybe we don't really want to know after all. Either way, it is a terrifying fate to ponder. 7. Lawnmower. Sinister. This one is very nearly a cheat considering how fast it all happens, but the fact of the matter is that we don't get to see exactly how a lawnmower tears apart a family one by one as they're laid out on the grass. And to give that horrible demise some context, it all starts with Sinister's fresh hot take on the home movie genre. Instead of lovely videos of parents and children having fun on grainy old tapes, we're instead forced to watch mysterious killers wipe out family units in increasingly horrific ways, with perhaps the most violent and upsetting culminating in the aptly titled lawn work. It isn't the flowers that are getting dead-headed in this tape though. As soon as we catch sight of the body on the floor, we cut to Ethan Hawke's reaction rather than getting to see any of the grisly bits. Thank God, to be honest, as perhaps the most visceral way to die is by taking a lawnmower blade to your head whilst helpless to do anything about it. It's in the same vein as the Indiana Jones death, but somehow far worse from the small scale, since you have to assume it would take a couple of goes over to really take someone out with a grass trimmer. 6. Suitcase, Dead Man's Shoes. Shane Meadows' intense psychological thriller Dead Man's Shoes doesn't skimp on the overwhelming atmosphere of grotty English towns and violent deaths, but there's one that stands out as being extra traumatizing for its completely left-field horror. Where central vengeful murderer Richard kills with obvious intent throughout the rest of the movie, it's the death of Tough that is a marked change from his usual modus operandi, and we have no idea quite how far that deprivation goes. Said Tough runs away from Richard hunting down his gang earlier in the movie, who is on a quest to deliver revenge to those that pushed his brother to suicide. Tough then turns up again, very much dead and packed into a suitcase, with a look of unadulterated terror plastered all over his face. Contorted, broken, and appearing as a complete surprise, we've no idea if Tough was dead or alive before being broken down into manageable luggage and wheeled into the middle of someone's living room. By the look on his face, we don't want any idea either. 5. Spunkmeyer and Pharaoh, Aliens. When you're in the world of aliens, if there is anything you don't want to see, it is a giant, slimy extraterrestrial leaving its goo all over your spaceship. Especially when it's 8 foot tall, armed with acid blood and a double jaw, and definitely is not friendly. But that's exactly what happens when Private Spunkmeyer jumps aboard the dropship on its way to pick up the rest of his unit, attempting to warn Corporal Pharaoh before she takes off, only to mysteriously vanish as they get into the air. Of course, mysteriously vanish is code for gets torn to shreds by the ginormous deadly space monster, and Pharaoh succumbs to the same fate as her blood splashes across the console. The ship crashes, everything explodes, and any hope of escaping a colony packed with similar alien baddies who will eviscerate the Marines in ways we can only imagine is gone with it. It's a rough way to go, but at least they really made an impact. Pun entirely intended. 4. Bambi's Mother, Bambi. Deaths don't have to be gory and unsettling to hit hard, as more than one Disney film has proven over the years. Sacrificing Anna and Elsa's parents to the sea, letting Mufasa get stampeded into a pulp, and aging a woman to the point of impossibility before booting her out a window are just a few of the atrocities on Walt Disney's card. But all of them pale in comparison to just how intensely Bambi's mother has permanently scarred our waking adult lives. Still not ready to talk about it, to be honest, but here we are anyway. After spending a good chunk of the movie teaching a fawn about the forest, Bambi's mother tells him to run after hearing poachers in pursuit, managing to follow until one awful gunshot rings out and Bambi is left alone in the world in their wintry, empty home. You don't need to see anything to understand the weight of what's just happened, and it remains one of the most heartbreaking, soul-rending, incredibly painful moments in cinematic history. Give us blood and guts over family breakdowns any day of the week. 3. Georgie, It Chapter 1. If you ever wondered what it would be like to be eaten alive by a supernatural clown that lives in the sewers, you're not alone. It Chapter 1 leaves plenty of questions behind after its incredibly scary opening, not in the least what the hell happens when Georgie is sucked into a storm drain. The poor boy gets his arm torn off at the socket and pulled into the murky depths of Derry's water system. So we're pretty much done on the whole horrifying off-screen thing after witnessing an innocent child get turned into a jigsaw puzzle. But what happens when we actually consider his horribly graphic fate? We have no idea what this monster is and what it's going to do with that poor boy. With the creeping hand emerging from the sewers, a spine-tingling warning of just how dangerous and determined Pennywise really is. He feasts on fear as much as he does humans themselves, meaning Georgie's disturbing fate might not be over and done with one bite-sized chunk. And if watching 3 sets of teeth pop out and his eyes roll around in his head is just a starter, then the rest will be far, far worse. No thank you. 2. Kowalski Gravity. There's nothing quite as terrifying as the enormity of space. Gravity plays on that strange emptiness of the giant void by putting 2 characters bang in the middle of it, with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney desperately trying to survive after their shuttle is damaged on a routine spacewalk. After an impact sends the pair flying away from the safety of their station, Clooney's Kowalski is forced to detach from Bullock to ensure at least one of them survives, meaning he unclips, lets go, and is left afloat in the eternity of space until he dies from exposure or lack of oxygen. Whilst it might not seem that horrifying a death initially, the implication that Kowalski is completely helpless as he drifts to his own gradual death, surrounded by darkness and cold, is absolutely a terrifying thought. Death by space abandonment seems something like being trapped alone on a desert island, only there's no air, no sea, no sand, and you're stuck perpetually in motion waiting for death. Maybe they're not all that similar. 1. Lust, 7. Since Seven is a whole movie jam-packed with crimes you never actually see committed in real time, enacted by a serial killer intent on recreating the 7 deadly sins in physical form, it really could be anything topping this list. From gluttony's death via spaghetti to vanity's noseless nightmare, there is a bunch of gruesome options. But it's lust that definitively stands out as the most disgusting, petrifying murder that has ever been acted out in the walls of framing. When a man decides to get down and dirty with a prostitute, this is not the kind of freaky he was expecting. Forced by John Doe to wear a bladed strap-on and continue with his, intended activities, we hear about how the act went down through a police interrogation that shows just how traumatized the man has become in the aftermath of being complicit in a murder. And whilst he definitely didn't get the worst end of this deal, his broken mind and jittery speech is just an inkling of how intensely awful the whole situation was. That we see every other sinful body apart from this poor woman is pretty telling in a movie as graphic as this. And that's our list. What off-screen death most scared you? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. I've been Ash and this has been What Culture. Make sure to subscribe to the What Culture YouTube channel for more lists like this. And don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. Thanks for watching.